What is the new big surveillance debate doing rounds in our country? Why Apple, Google and Samsung are opposing the proposal coming from Telecom, and how this particular proposal affects your privacy and other dimensions. Imagine a world where your phone's location can never be switched off, even by you. And this is the pinpoint of the exact debate that is taking place in our country, that why our location needs to be known till single meter by the telecom operators or by the government. Hello everyone, welcome to Vajiram and Ravi's Flash News. My name is Shubhangi Singh and today we are going to discuss about the proposal which talks about not switching off the AGPS, that is assisted GPS, at any point of time by the users, and what kind of backlash and pushback it has received from big techs and why it is important for us to understand, especially with regards to our privacy. So let us begin with understanding what exactly is the proposal that we are talking about. Okay, so when we talk about this particular proposal, this has brought in by COAI, which is Cellular Operators Association of India, and as of now, this particular proposal by the telecom industry through COAI is being under consultation. Now let us understand what exactly is the proposal. So basically the idea is that every smartphone maker needs to bring in AGPS, and that needs to be kept permanently on all devices which are sold in India. AGPS is nothing but assisted GPS, the technology that you use in phone to look into the maps or go to the location. But this is different in regards because this will not be switched off. So for example, if you are using an app, you generally give the permission for that app to track your location. But in this regard, all the devices that will be sold in our country, that will have AGPS on permanently, and you also will not be able to switch off, because this particular proposal also involves that there is no option for users to switch off the location services, and there will be persistent satellite based tracking which will be available all times. Now because of this, there is further possible disabling of the OS pop-up that you usually get when you get to know that your operator or the app is tracking your location. That disabling will also take place, and the most important one is that device level tracking capability will be available to agencies on demand. So for example, any agency wants to track a location of person X at any point of time, so the device level, that means where that particular phone is, can be tracked immediately. Now there has been no final decision on this yet, but this has been making news, especially with context to the Sanchar Sathi app which was brought in, where the government brought in the proposal that it has to be pre-installed, and there later was a ruckus on that, and then later this whole proposal was withdrawn. Especially in that context, this particular proposal where it has severe consequences on privacy and other factors as well, we need to understand that. Now that we have understood what is in the proposal, now let us understand why this proposal has been brought. Is there any particular reason that is being cited? What is the justification? So as I said, that this proposal has been brought in by COAI. This is basically a industry related proposal. So telecom industry is basically bringing in this proposal. So what is happening here is that telecom operators are saying that as of the current method that they have in terms of tracking and in terms of GPS capabilities, they only have cell tower triangulation. That means if the location needs to be tracked by any agency for any matter, then they have a broad area based on the cell tower. Let's just say cell tower is situated in this area. This is the tower which is located. So they have a broad location, and sometimes that is also inaccurate. And another thing, that it is very difficult and slow to process during urgent investigations. That is why COAI wants, because of these problems, COAI is saying that if we bring in a GPS that will be on all the time, it will give us precise meter level accuracy, and it will help in especially criminal investigation. Pop-up alerts Basically, if they will not be disabled, they will warn the targets that they are being traced. That is why pop-up should be disabled. And if there will be a unified system across all devices, it will be easy in terms of compliance and speed. So, all in all, COI, telecom operators coming together, and they are pitching a proposal that location of every individual should be tracked, should be known, because it is important for national security, and this will function as a national security built-in tool. But the real question is, actually will it, or it might be used for other purposes as well. So, that is where the actual debate lies. This is what they are saying, but what actually it can do needs to be understood. In this very context, before citizens, it was Apple, Google, Samsung, the big techs who directly went ahead and pushed back against it, that this is not acceptable, and there are certain big concerns. That is why they were going against it. What were those concerns? The first concern that will be ours as well was the fact that it violates privacy norms across the globe. That is why big techs went against it. No country currently mandates especially a permanent, the most important part here is permanent, especially non-disableable device level GPS tracking, and if India does it, it would be nothing but an outlier in this situation, which is not a very fancy place when we are talking about in this particular context. Second, we also have to understand that sensitive users become very vulnerable in this situation. That is another factor that has been quoted by big techs. Sensitive users, be it policymakers, be it judges, be it operators, journalists, CEOs, military officials whose locations are very important from the perspective of national security, they will become vulnerable. They will be targets which will be used with this very mechanism. So, the anonymity which is required for the profession, that will be absolutely lost. Another thing that has been quoted on the end of big tech is the fact that user autonomy will be compromised, and also the transparency which is required between the operator and the user will also go away, because they are talking about disabling the pop-up which tells that you are being tracked. So, the right which user has to know when the tracking is happening, that will also be taken away without telling them. And last factor, that this is basically, it is a regulatory overreach, and in this context another organization, that is India's Cellular and Electronics Association, they have said that this is nothing but an unprecedented continuous surveillance that will be embedded in everybody's phone, and that has multiple layers of risk and concerns involved. For example, you have to understand, when we are talking about such an enablement, your phone will permanently transform into a surveillance hardware. That means when the constant AGPS is working, that means every smartphone is basically a trackable object. You will be tracked all the time. Another thing, the function creep. As we are saying, this tool is for national security. Even in that context, whenever we have seen tools for national security present, they are often misused for governance, they are often misused for political monitoring and tax enforcement, etc. We have seen this in past, and we might see this in future as well. So, we have to be very sure that what we want to execute through this proposal. Another risk that lies right here is the risk of breach. When we are talking about the whole location and precise location database, that means there will be a permanent availability of high value targets that can be used by hackers, fraud people, rogue actors, and they can be targeted through this very database. And if this is for real, then that means people would know that they are being tracked all the time, they are traceable, and it is going to affect their behavioral mobility, it is going to affect their right to dissent and everything around it. Now, I hope this paints a real picture in front of you that what exactly might unfold if this proposal gets a go ahead. In this scenario, it becomes also very important for us to look into the legal as well as constitutional aspects associated with it. So, let us start with the constitutional provision when we are talking about. So, in this very context, it becomes very important that we start with Article 21. Article 21, right to life, which also gives us right to privacy. In this very context, we are going to understand it from the perspective and the Supreme Court judgment that came in 2017, where it was established that privacy is a fundamental right. And if in any scenario, if this is compromised or if this is violated, any intrusion is seen in terms of privacy, it should necessarily have a legality. That means there should be a proper law which should back it. There should be a legitimate aim, national security, public order. Second, necessity. Any less intrusive alternative was not available. For example, if you are talking about tracking all the smartphone devices in India, an alternative could be tracking it case by case. In this scenario, in situations where there are certain issuance of SIMs which are in the objectionable condition, they are tracked based on cases to cases. But if there is extreme necessity, there is no option at all, nothing can be done, in such a scenario, it is acceptable. Next, proportionality. That means narrowly tailored minimum intrusion. Even if it is necessary, then we make sure that it is made for the very specific cause. If you are talking about national security, it is addressing that only. And the most important one here is the safeguards. Even if there is a intrusion of privacy, there should be proper safeguards placed on it, be it when we are talking about oversight, be it when you are talking about accountability, or be it transparency. And if you talk about this proposal, I think it is not standing on any of these as per like. Now, when we talk about this whole proposal and we see this context, we get to see that it is not meeting the basic necessity, proportionality and safeguard standards which was set by the Supreme Court itself. Now, this was the constitutional provision from the perspective of right to privacy. Now, let us look into legal provisions, and that will be through DPDP Act, that is Digital Personal Data Protection Act of 2023, and this very clearly says that if there is a provision for related to national security, in that scenario, yes, digital protection might be included, but there are certain core principles, and in that principle we have a purpose limitation. And funnily enough, in this purpose limitation, continuous tracking has no specific purpose, and that is why it enables universal background surveillance, which brings us to the next point, that is of data minimization. If there will be always on location, it clearly violates the principle of collecting only what is needed. This is as per law. This has what already been established, and this proposal clearly stands against this as well. So, I hope this gives you a preview into the fact that why there are debates around it and why big techs are going against it. When we are talking about violation of fundamental rights, that means we are talking about harming the democracy at the very core, and which is very fundamental to our country itself. Now, on this note, we will be moving to the last part, where we will be talking about that what might happen next. It is highly expected that in this coming time, this proposal is diluted and there is only case based activation, not continuous tracking will take place. Emergency only trigger mechanism, AGPS is activated only during emergency or in missing person scenario, and even if there is to be a surveillance framework, it has to be better structured and the proper details of it should be made under proper law, be it the Telecommunication Act, where there is outlining of how audit trails will happen, warrant based access, time limits and independent oversight mechanisms as well. On this note, I will be leaving you with a practice question here. You can put down the answers of this particular question in the comment section. Now telling you the answer of previous question that was asked, the correct answer here is B. Now that was all from my side today. Thank you so much.